what you're seeing here, and on purpose I didn't begin to speak straight away, because as soon as I do, these attacks usually tone down. What you see on here is essentially the attacks on me every single day. You can see I'm sitting in an aluminium, I've got aluminium behind me. I'll show you what my work area looks like in a moment. Basically, I'm sitting here and I have to sit in an aluminium bunker, because if I do not, if I just sit in my office normally, the pain of these attacks that you just saw is unbearable. So what this is the Wi-Fi is off in this building. So actually I do have a mobile phone here, but I can show you the mobile phone doesn't really have, okay, this has nothing to do with the mobile phone. I'll remove the mobile phone and then you can see I'm now taking it out of the room. So you can see that the background that's measured hasn't changed, and these attacks, as you can see, are just the same. And you also noticed when I rose, and as you heard my voice just go and recede, you also probably saw a couple of really hard shots, and that's because every single time I go through the my office door, I get shot at, and that's because the beam line, I think, comes from a neighbor's house, because I do get shot on the left-hand side of the head, and from past experience where my aluminium shielding was, and where the line was, where someone could have hit me on the forehead, it seems to point at a neighbor's house. And I can see that neighbor's flat straight through the door of the study, through the door of the living room, through the dining room window. It points straight at this house. And I think there's a beam line, and every single time I rise, a software just shoots at me. Every single time I go through a light gate, or whatever this might be, I just get shot at. Now, what you see here is essentially the EM Fields Acousticom 2 electro smog detector, which only measures between 200 megahertz and 8 gigahertz. And the units here are volt per meter, and it's a non-linear scale, so 0.01, 0.02, 0.05, 0.1, 0.3, 136. In my experience, the attacks which rely on classified military technology do correlate with these bursts. So this is just my pain perception. It does actually correlate with these really intense bursts, but there are also other modes in which I'm attacked. For example, very diffuse microwaving. I discovered that it will not show up like a burst, but instead the audio, because this thing is converting all the signals also to audio, so you don't just have an overall intensity, which really is just an overall intensity, a huge frequency band, and then you've just got this kind of energy deposited sort of thing. But what also happens in these diffuse with diffuse microwaving is that suddenly I have this metal scratching sound. So there seems to be this is some other thing, but it's very metallic clicking, metallic scratching. It sounds like a bit like bubble wrap if you just or maybe like aluminium foil if you just crumple it up, but just very fine and very tinny. That's what really painful microwave attacks where my joints are aching, my skin is burning, seems to correlate with. So this is one thing, and these attacks are extremely, extremely unpleasant. So when I sit here, I'll show you my bunker in a moment. By the way, I'm not a fan of aluminium. I don't do this because I like it. I do it because I have to, just to be able to work pain-free. Or as good as. You can also see the light levels are not very good. That's because it's actually a really sunny, beautiful day here in Switzerland. But I have these, aluminium, basically military-grade aluminium shielding panels to just, block out the direct attacks from my neighbors. Who shoot pencil beams as well. So I think they're also pulsed because they're very hard to detect. If it was just like a laser beam always on, I could just hold this and then find out what the beam is, and sometimes that's possible. But with the pulsed shots at me, it's very, very hard, because I would have to hold it into the pulse, into the middle of the pulse, exactly the right moment. And those pencil beams, they are, I think, the size of a pound coin. So, okay, so these are the attacks. They are absolutely brutal. But also, if I'm sitting and working, so I'm reading something, I'll receive very unpleasant pulses to the head, and that will feel like a well, not quite like an electromagnetic shock, but like a pulse. Really, you just get pumped with energy, and this pulse just literally just knocks you like that. So when you're trying to, and it goes straight into your brain, I should say. So it's not just on your skin. It's like as if someone had just pulsed an electromagnetic shock into your brain, which is exactly what it is. It's an electromagnetic wave that punches through your brain, basically, and deposits energy and triggers the nerves. But the effect it has is that it throws your thoughts. So imagine people can harass you. Like, this is how, imagine the dumbest bully you've ever met at school. Like the dumbest kid who's so brutishly, idiotically dumb that he's beyond repair. And now imagine the intelligence agencies have given that idiot a gun with which he can pulse straight into your brain and just harass you and just go pulse, pulse. That's exactly what these moronic gang stalkers and harassers of the intelligence agencies are doing. And only the intelligence agencies have the means to surround you, hire flats, have access to military technology, and have this gang stalking operative, informant network. So just by the signature of the harassment that the victims experience, it is blindingly obvious who is doing this. So this is done by the intelligence agencies. The people responsible for this, the people ultimately responsible, are the heads of the intelligence agencies. So there's no, Easter egg hunt for the perpetrators, or, happy guessing who on earth this could be. This is done by the intelligence agencies with the full acquiescence, connivance, and support of the heads of the intelligence agencies. So the buck stops with them, right? And yes, there might be other secret organizations and even more secret intelligence agencies, but the point is that the people who are in charge of finding out those and bringing them to justice, so should they do anything criminal, anything, let's say, like terrorism, any sort of systematic terrorizing of the population, it would be the intelligence agency's job to track them down. Not innocent victims, like single moms and, really nice black ladies desperately trying to fight for their health and life because they're being assaulted by these people. No, this is not how it should be. It is the intelligence agency's job. That's why they get all the money. Not to stage false flags and then make us believe that everything is, they're dealing with it. That is not what all the money is for. And this is where this really fundamental misunderstanding is now, festering. If it comes down to this, which is I and ladies like Rochelle Finlayson, who went public, and she's on YouTube saying that, she is suffering from remote neural monitoring, from gang stalking, from electromagnetic harassment. Her body gets microwaved, the fact that she already had to do the research work, because she didn't strike me like an intelligence analyst for, the arms industry. So it's not really her job. So if she ends up having to do it, the question is who didn't do their job? And that is the intelligence agencies. This is the intelligence agency's job. So as soon as you see the video by Rochelle Finlayson, you have to ask, what the F is Andrew Parker, head of MI5, doing? What the hell has he been doing the last, X years? What were his predecessors doing? And the question is, given that this video is now on, online, on YouTube, and probably by now even GCHQ must have picked up on it, what the F are they going to do and when? Because this has to stop. And if you don't ask these questions, these people will continue. But these are the questions to ask. Why the hell do innocent civilians, we are professionals. Like, I am a professional. I'm a high energy physicist as well, right? So yes, I can get on the case and I can research all this nonsense. The question is, why do I have to? Why do I have to research it and then report about it? What the F has MI5 been doing, the BND been doing, the NDB, that's the Swiss, intelligence agencies, been doing, and more importantly, well, no, not really more importantly, but equally importantly, what the F have the journalists been doing? Because journalists do get paid for this, right? To research stuff and report it in a digestible fashion. So if I'm doing this job, right, what on earth is Private Eye doing? To whom I, by the way, talked about this, or tried to. I was then, asked to leave the building before I could talk to any journalist. I've emailed the Daily Mail. I called the Guardian journalist. They all have been given hints and they can research this. They don't have to write about my case. They could research it and write about the many, many other victims who are now public. Public. How hard can it be for Guardian journalists to use Google? It seems to be like the most insurmountable problem. Or is it? Or is it rather the case that also journalists are paid by the intelligence agencies? They have handlers, and their handlers said, no, you're not reporting about this. I think that's how it is. And at that point, when we realized that actually the Guardian is not the Guardian is MI5's, newsletter, and the same with Private Eye, MI5 and MI6 newsletter, bi-weekly newsletter, then I guess we can stop buying this stuff, which is what I'm also gonna do. So, I stopped reading the newspapers a long time ago. I have like one subscription which I made 3 years ago, still running out, for The Economist, and that's an eye-opener for what, absolute tosh is in there. But it's quite funny. If you read The Economist and take it to be The Onion, it's hilarious. But then I also still have, and I publicly state that, a subscription to Private Eye, which is going to run out. And when I realized how they treat really serious cases, really serious whistleblowers, when it's about, they're really good, this at least is what it seems. So they do pick up on some whistleblowers and support them in the NHS. And I thought that's very, very, very good. But of course I have to remember the statement by a German comedian who said, or his name was Karl Valentin, and he said, isn't it interesting that every day only as much happens in the world as fits into a newspaper? Every day, right? And of course the implication is much more is happening, but we never get to know about it. And the quality of a newspaper is, I used to think, oh, okay, what is it that's in there? But that's just the visible bit. No. The quality of a newspaper is what have they left out. Because they could have good stuff in it, like Private Eye, and then the really important stuff they still leave out. Was that a good newspaper that's actively censoring people fighting for their life in Britain, or being maimed repeatedly, attending a court case, a high court case, being attacked after a high court case like I was? I was a litigant at the high court case and I was physically assaulted in the hotel room afterwards, after I was stalked demonstratively by MI5 all the way to the hotel room. I was shot in the head with electromagnetic guns, and these microwave guns hurt. It feels like having nails shot into the back of your head with a nail gun. Is that newsworthy? And the fact that the transcript was tampered with, that a question by the judge, certainly one question that I remember distinctly, and my answer has been scrubbed from the transcript. Is that newsworthy? I think so. And then when I realized that, things are happening, and after the attack, and after I got death threats and survived an assassination attempt, after my second hearing, I went straight to Private Eye. And they said sorry. The ladies who I was talking to there were really impatient. But then I just got I left them bits from my court bundle as like an introduction, talking point, because I didn't leave them all the evidence. And I left my mobile phone number, and they had my email. Did they get back to me only to say, sorry, we can't help you? And then they sent the stuff back. Now that's very interesting, because I would say that if I look at every article in Private Eye, I mean, some are really important, like the NHS, because a lot of people are dying in the NHS. Malpractice, sometimes, premeditated. Sadly, it happens. And all this stuff also has to be in there. But then they also have like pages about bullshit other journalists said. Now, that space is what I am saying really that much less important than Paul Dacre, again, putting teenage girls into the Daily Mail. He does that every day of every week. So when Private Eye keeps reporting about that, I mean, I have read Private Eye now for quite some time, and I mean, that's a recurring theme. And it's good, because they should expose this, because in a sense it's essentially marketing teenage girls and their sex appeal in a newspaper, which sounds a bit like pedophilia. And it's very important that this is called out. But 1 week, could you have maybe one of these, like, because we're talking pages and pages of journalists reporting about other journalists, could we maybe have an inch about British citizens and, European nationals, German nationals in my case, traveling to Britain and being attacked by British military intelligence in Britain after attending a British court case in London? Would that perhaps make it into Private Eye? Perhaps? Instead of all the many other things that they put in there. I mean, I can't get out the Private Eye that was published the week after I talked to them, which was the day Joe Cox died. And I could have a look at all the, yes, you can spend some inches writing about that. But really, is that our biggest problem? Of what other journalists, what bullcrap they wrote? Because, I mean, God, if you want to fill the Private Eye with the bullcrap other newspapers printed, aren't you, I mean, do you realize what you're doing? You're complaining that those guys haven't spent their newspaper, columns writing about important stuff, and meanwhile you're repeating what they wasted their columns on. So you can do that once. I mean, you could have, quarterly, like a name and, shame of this is the tosh, and then maybe have statistics, with some examples of this is the tosh other people waste their time on, laudable. But when you're doing that every 2 weeks, logically, do you understand that you're no better? I mean, you try to be, but in the end, your inches get wasted, not even on your own tosh, you muppets, but on the tosh of other people, right? I mean, and then you spend pages doing this. Could perhaps 1 week, like literally like this much would be enough, like make it into Private Eye? That would be just so interesting, because I could have sworn, I don't think I've got the copy right here to hand, but I think it was just in the last Private Eye. It must be, maybe it's in the dining room. There was an article reporting about someone, I can't remember, but I think he had an employment, altercation, disagreement with his boss, got sacked, and then was trying to, I think, go through a tribunal, and then he suffered 3 heart attacks. I mean, that's really unusual. Of course, we can all say, oh yeah, but if he's got heart problems, then, multiple heart attacks are, possible, yeah? But for 3 heart attacks, there's an actual statistical likelihood. Like, 1 heart attack is more likely than 2 heart attacks. And then there are certain people who keep having heart attacks, granted, but it comes with a certain probability. And for this probability to coincide, people going up against powerful people, now there's a certain probability for that, and it gets ever slimmer. I mean, that's how statistics works, and this is what stupid people don't understand about statistics. It's not just like, oh yeah, but it can happen. Oh, it can happen, it can happen. That's what I keep hearing. Yeah, but it can happen. Yeah, with a certain probability. And when something else is happening a lot more, then that is more likely. Do you understand? So, you know, like, for example, someone comes in and has their head smashed up, right? Like here. And they say, I was hit over the head, with a baseball bat by the local thug. And then you say, or people in authority say, whose son it is, that local thug, they say, no, you must have been hit by an asteroid. Like a shooting star, some debris, which can be rock size, must have hit you over the head. And yeah, it does happen. It does happen that we have rocks out of space dropping onto Earth. Apart from the fact that the signature might be, the energy might be different and you might have burn marks and... Okay, that aside, yeah, could happen. But if you compare it to the number of baseball bats and brutes with baseball bats, availing themselves occasionally of the baseball bat, that story is much more likely. Okay? So similarly here, when you've got a guy, you're in private eye. I tell you, in mid-June, that people are proliferating these electromagnetic weapons. I even wrote that in the bundle I've given you. And I say, we really need to talk about this because arms manufacturers, make these things for the price of less than a laptop. They can be sold, you can kill somebody with it, doesn't leave any traces, and it doesn't have a serial number like a gun and you don't need a license. Problem? Yeah? And funnily enough, I can understand the case of saying, yes, but given that this is what it is, and given these are German arms manufacturers, and we're in Britain, and we can't really do this because we can't print it, because if we do, then we advertise those guns to all our psychopaths who will then buy from the German arms manufacturers who we can't shut down because we're in Britain, so they're going to go online and they're going to buy it, and then they're going to bring it back and kill Britons with it. Yeah, I see that. But the key is they already are killing Britons with it. So now what? You're going to say, yeah, but they're killing fewer Britons than they would if we published it. Yeah, or how about you publish it, and then within a week we have a discussion where we all can think, oh, holy cow, this is a really, really bad idea making those things. And then we get on the case of having this whole thing shut down and have these weapons banned. And maybe inform our police what to look for to actually fight crime. Because otherwise you've got a big fat backdoor. Your police is clueless, and I have that on video. I have Greater Manchester Police saying to my face they've never heard about microwave weapons. I'm sorry, I do have the evidence. And then people are dying, the police is clueless, and you're covering it up. How's that better? Private eye. Because I told you about microwave weapons in the middle of June, and now, at the end of November, you report about somebody who had 3 heart attacks. Well, maybe if you'd reported about it in mid-June when I told you, or much more likely because statistically, I can tell that many people went to you and told you about this. That's the beauty of statistics. I don't even need evidence. I can just direct evidence. I can tell that there are all these victims. There are only 4 or 5 news organizations in the UK. So if you've got thousands of victims, one of them must have told Private Eye and the Daily Mail and the Times and the Telegraph and the Guardian and the Independent. This is a mathematical fact. And none of you have reported. Not one. Now, had the Private Eye maybe kicked off this discussion in May, this guy might not have had his 3 heart attacks. I have to check the exact date when he had his heart attacks. But there are people who are having heart attacks now because their neighbors shoot at them with microwave weapons. So maybe now would be just the time to actually have the balls to open up about this. Because otherwise, all of you journalists in your cushy jobs, your pension plans, and also you're protected. If something happens to you, there are in our organization or institutions mechanisms to speak up about the deaths of journalists and the suspicious death of journalists. Now, these safety mechanisms do not exist really, or to the same extent, when civilians have to speak up. So now we're in the situation where literally we're down to women and children speaking up. You know, I mean, women and children should be the last line of defense, not the first line of defense. Gentlemen, where the hell are your balls? Because you should be going in first into this battle, not women and children first. The children who have to come forward about being sexually abused, by psychopaths. And then the women have to come forward about being, sexually and physically abused by psychopaths, then have to research declassified military technology, retro-engineer how the hell this stuff might work, find the perpetrators, go to court cases, be ridiculed, be attacked even harder, try to talk to journalists who then ignore it, and then spend time waffling about, the newest episode on Netflix. Remote controller, interesting name. I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's also interesting, isn't it? Remote controller. When our current problems are that people are being remote controlled by the intelligence agencies, having someone write for Private Eye under the pseudonym remote controller almost sounds like a retired person from military intelligence. I'm sorry, it's just really bad coincidence, I mean, these are the things you pick up when you start being, your hand starts being remote controlled when you lie in bed at night, because people are having a laugh about these electromagnetic weapons, which do have this capability, by the way. I can explain in detail how the physics works and how that actually works, so that you understand. But I can tell you now they do have this capability. So one is left to read inches and inches about the newest Netflix series. Meanwhile, British people are being tortured to death in a premeditated fashion, where MI5 is running a shift service. This isn't an accident. This is not just an accident that just happened to hit Rochelle Finlayson. Sorry, I keep referring to her because she's really important. She spoke. She made literally, I think, the most dignified and just impressive video when she talks about this in a calm fashion. I mean, when you know what she's been through, what she's describing, you can only understand it if they've done this to you as well. But to have the dignity and the incredible emotional resource to actually make that video in such a, kind, dignified fashion. I mean, you see how I'm making my videos. I am furious. I can't stop myself from just effing in your face, because this is how disgusted I am. So Rochelle has done much better than I have. But the fact that she is being tortured in a premeditated fashion, and you guys go on about the frickin' Netflix series, how degenerate can you be? You're not a newspaper. You're a retirement place for spooks. That's what it sounds like. Because then it would make sense why you're not writing about this when the spooks are doing it. Because, they have to cover for their bodies. And, now what we know about pedophilia, we can also kind of guess where these spooks might be, hobnobbing. And what parties they might be hobnobbing, with a strong emphasis on the second syllable. It doesn't look good, does it? Really. And sorry, now I've gone on about Private Eye because I actually was in their frickin' office, and it was actually from the lady next to the window that I got to know this thing about Joe Cox. So that's going to kind of stick in my mind forever. What also stuck in my mind is that I'm in private eye. I'm desperate to talk to a journalist about not just me being maimed, because, hey, I'm not a British citizen, so maybe according to private eye, I don't actually have a right to life in Britain, not being British. Sorry. But I also wanted to talk to them about the death of British people with British nationality. Did they care? No. And then what was also really interesting is that I say, please, 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 I'm just here today in Britain. I'm just coming from the High Court. Last time I came back from the High Court hearing, I was shot in the head, so I'm really scared. And last time I went to the High Court, I got a death threat, and then 3 days later an assassination attempt followed on the motorway. Scary like fuck. So now I'm coming back from the High Court. I'm a bit stressed, and I really would like to talk to a journalist about it, because it's kind of like news that this is actually happening in the UK. So, you know, being in there, being told, oh, sorry, I mean, these are the private eye offices, but there are no journalists here. None. I mean, they don't even, and I was told, I said, but I mean, it's private eye. I mean, is it just that today, you know, everybody's on holiday? Or, and they're like, no, they work from home, and, you know, they don't always come in. Right. I mean, they're journalists. They could be anywhere in the country, right? And they can, of course, they can work from home. And a lot of people do. But to try to tell me that in the private eye office, there's not one journalist. Like, literally, I have more chances finding a journalist in Asda than in the private eye offices. It's stretching it a bit. And at the time, I was really, really scared of being again shot in the head with electromagnetic nail guns, like last time, which made me collapse in pain. So I was not in my fighting mood. But then to hear, and I said, please give me time to just write some handwritten notes in total stress. And I've just been representing myself in the High Court. I'm really stressed. I'm scared to be assassinated, you know. And there I am. And they were very impatient because it was getting to 5 o'clock. And then to sit there and have one of the ladies answer a phone call and go like, yeah, no, they're upstairs. They're having the writers' meeting. Writers' meeting. They. Doesn't it kind of imply that they are the journalists? Or do they rent out the private eye offices for conferences? You know, for other writers, like novel writers, just to have like the atmosphere of the private eye offices. It kind of like rubs on your creative writing skills. Because it sounds like, if not all, then a lot of them were just a flight of stairs above me. Somehow. Doesn't it? Because writer and meeting in the same sentence sounds like, you know, it's a meeting of writers in the private eye offices, probably of the private eye office newspaper writers. Maybe you have other writers. Maybe you have people who write the adverts, you know, or I don't know. They write the impressum every week, and they have to decide what to write. Could be, but it could also be that someone just took the piss, couldn't it? Because that's again, I mean, you know, more likely. Because it could be that private eye, you know, pays so many writers who are not journalists, they just write other stuff, that they actually have a meeting to be they having a meeting in the private eye offices, right? It could be, but other things are more likely, no? So it very much sounded to me like, you know, I'm coming there thinking, you know, I mean, and then the other thing was also that, you know, I got there something like, I think 20 to 5 or 4:30 or something, because this is how long it took me to travel, you know, after my High Court hearing, you know, have a break, to calm down, then to go to private eye and find the offices in London and actually iterate my way there. And then I'm there. And yeah, it's getting to 5 o'clock, and I mean, if there's one thing that British people really hate, is you coming there with, you know, having received death threats and survived an assassination attempt, and being scared for your life close to 5 o'clock, that really pisses people off. So if you could just, you know, like schedule your death fears not to coincide with the 20 minutes before 5 o'clock, that would really assist British people, you know. But what is this? What the F is this? Really, I mean, any of your journalists could have come down and go like, okay, thank you, yes, we'll look into it, bye. And that already would have made me feel better. But actually being what very much sounds like lied in the face doesn't look good, you know. So I don't know how important these meetings are. I mean, there must be literally like Churchill's, you know, war room meetings. But when you have a young woman who has the court documents, she's got her freaking documents, she's got like her PhD certificate that she can tell you, yes, she is a high energy physicist, she knows what she's talking about, she's not lying, and in fact you can call her colleagues and ask, is she the most mendacious person you know? And they would have to say, if they're truthful, no, actually, we never actually had her say, you know, a lie. Never. I mean, she's quite feisty and she keeps like fighting for stuff like removing black mold from college laundrettes, which pissed us off at the time, really, because we do like black mold here in St. John's College. But otherwise, no, I don't think she ever lied to us. She's a pain in the neck, yes, but she doesn't lie. Bye. You know, everything was there. Everything was there. I had literally the bundle with which I went to the High Court. What you got was like a slimmed down thing, because I also do not leave everything there for people who couldn't give a damn, right? But I left my phone number. You had my email. Did you care? No. And what happened since then? Since then, we can statistically say that a lot of people have been harmed with electromagnetic weapons in Britain. Some had heart attacks induced. Yeah. They have their life wrecked, and you are not willing to report about this. And then what happens is when people try to report about being actually tortured to death and maimed with electromagnetic weapons, when they actually come forward, the police is told to stamp them as mentally ill. And this trick kind of worked for like a couple of years. But I think I made another video where I just compared it to just making the same crap joke over and over and over again. And you do it for 1 year, and then everyone heard about it. And then the second year, and the third year, and then the fourth year. And you do it for a decade. And then really everyone heard the joke. And then you do it for another half decade. And then people are really bored with it. And then you do it for another year. You do it for 16 years. And the reason why I pick up the 16 years is because when the first people came forward and they started being force sectioned, that was in 1999 and the year 2000. Now in the year 2002, there was a newspaper article in Die Welt in Germany, right? It's like it's like the Guardian in Germany, you know, the same size of roughly same number of circulation number. And that was in 2002, and we're now 14 years later, and they reported about, it was called Mikrowelle als Nahkampfwaffe, in English, microwave as a close combat weapon. And that article, you can find it on Die Welt. 2002, I think the 6th of January 2002. And in there, they report that already in 2002 there were 150 court cases to do with microwave weapons. 150 court cases. Now, by the time that's public, stamping people as mentally ill when they talk about microwave weapons, when there have been 150 court cases, typically people's mental fantasies do not end up in court because they're weeded out beforehand by lawyers and, you know, by judges. But 150 times it's already gone to court. And now we know who the arms manufacturers are who are making these things. So statistically, as soon as you've got a weapon, someone's going to use it, and then, use it on someone. And then the victim, if it survives, will come forward. So by the time the victim comes forward, right, and you know that the weapons exist, you can work out statistically that you expect some victims to start with. You expect some victims to survive, and out of those who survive, you expect some to come forward. That's just how mathematics works, And typically, there's not a separate mathematics for Private Eye or The Guardian or the UK government or the German government. There's just mathematics. That's the beauty of it, So by the time all of these things have happened, you've got the arms manufacturers, you've got court cases, we can all stop the bullcrap about mental illness. No, it's not to do with mental illness, and I'm sorry, a psychiatrist cannot judge because he's not a physicist or an engineer. This is to do with physics or engineering. That's my department, not a psychiatrist department. And I tell you, yes, these weapons exist. Yes, they can shoot through walls. Yes, they can hurt people inside their own home. And guess what? I do have evidence that they already have. So is it maybe time that you report about this? Maybe. Is it too much to ask? Maybe. Especially when you're given evidence that, yes, this court case has existed. I can give my testimony that, yes, I have been attacked. My husband can confirm that, yes, I was crying on the floor, cowering in the fetal position on the bed shortly after, complaining about having intense pain being shot into my brain, and saying that if I put my hand on my head, sorry, it was the other side, they shot me here in the back of the right-hand side, in the in the London hotel. If I put my right hand on my head, that they actually punched through my hand and I had intense knuckle pain. It sounds like a beam because it goes through my hand and my skull right into my brain. And it really hurts. It really, when you get attacked by military grade microwave weapons, you know about it. It's not something you've ever felt. I mean, it's not like a gunshot wound. I guess having a gunshot through my head would be worse, granted. But then again, if MI5 shot, a gun through my hotel room, there would be a bullet hole, right? There would be shattered glass, and it would be a big pool of blood and brain in that hotel room, right? So in a sense it would be worse, and in a sense it would be better, because then we would have evidence that even the last moron could accept. Now with electromagnetic weapons, it's a bit harder, but it's also not that hard, really. It really isn't. But this is the situation, guys. That you essentially are an accessory to crime if you refuse to report it. And I have tried to report it to the police, and then they come with the mental health theatre, and I can put the video up online. Well, that shit does not fly anymore. And the reason why it doesn't fly is because people have been publicly executed with microwave weapons. And Dr. Ronnie Kilde is one of them. She was the chief medical officer of Lapland, as I know, in Finland, right? The chief medical officer, dead. And she complained for 10 years about being harassed with microwave weapons, electromagnetic weapons more generally. And she was campaigning against them. And she was harassed. She's on public record saying that they murdered her parents. And then she died in a fashion that can only be explained with microwave or electromagnetic weapons. Now, that's already a public execution. Okay? And other public executions followed. For example, this lady, and I hope she's real because her website looks pretty real and her data, Britta Jacquard, I think, and many, many, many more. In fact, I sent the Bundeskriminalamt, the German federal police, an entire list of the deaths that I could find, all to do with microwave weapons. Right? But there are people, that there's now evidence. The ex-general counsel of the World Bank, Karen Hudes, publicly stated she was attacked by scalar weapons. That's another name. Directed energy weapons, scalar weapons, electromagnetic weapons, same stuff, right? It's that thing. And she publicly stated she was attacked by that. She publicly stated that it had stroke-like symptoms, but her doctors confirmed she did not have a stroke. And she's on public record, and people can look at her presentation that she did, which she does, I think every week or every 2 weeks, before and after, and you can tell the effect of these electromagnetic weapons. So it's now public. It's public. Everybody who researches this can find this anywhere apart from the English newspapers or the German newspapers. So maybe it's time now to stop the crap and actually report about this, because people are dying. And if you don't report it, if the police doesn't investigate on purpose and then purposefully stages intimidation theater on the mental health theme, which we know mathematically they must know that these weapons exist. Again, statistics is pretty good. I mean, you do realize that, for example, at CERN and these big labs and in astrophysics and also in medicine, all our measurements are based on statistics. I'm not sure if you realize, but they are. It's not the statistics you read in newspapers. It's like fancy statistics, like the stuff that actually works. And I tell you, the stuff that actually works, statistics, that sort of statistics tells us that all of the police forces have now heard about it. Also Manchester, most certainly London. So staging intimidation theater on you must have mental health issues. It's like telling the same joke for another year after 16 years. Granddad, we've heard the joke. It's okay, right? But if the police doesn't help and instead stages intimidation theater, they become, because they do this knowingly, they essentially knowingly cover up a crime you've reported. Now that means they become an accessory to the crime. They are part of the cover-up. They are part of blocking victims from getting justice, perverting the course of justice, becoming an accessory to the crime. Yes, right? I mean, the lawyers can work out the finer details and, which words to use to describe it, but ballpark, that is it. And then if you guys do not report about this, right? What does that make you? Because for you the same argument applies. Statistically, we know you must have been told about this. And not just that. We had this journalist, Udo Ulfkotte, go public and say a lot of the journalists and all of the big names are working for the intelligence agencies, and that's where they get their information from partially. I mean, he named the CIA specifically, but, we can also use mathematics to work out that the CIA is not the only organization buying journalists here. Right, but the intelligence agencies also know about this technology because, hey, if I can research it on Google, so can they, right? So they must know. So if they pay you and they know and you don't report it, but this information is out there, and the intelligence agencies, ironically, are also in charge of fighting terrorism. And I think if anything qualifies as terrorism is being tortured to death in your home by a shift service. I think that is terrorism. Again, we can call in the lawyers and check the fine print, but I think that's terrorism. You can be blown up like in a second. That's terrorism, okay? Yeah, good. Then it's also terrorism if you don't get completely blown up, but just a hand gets blown off, right? Terrorism, we agree, right? Okay, you're still a victim of terrorism. Okay. And then what if a shrapnel just damages your eye? That's terrorism too, right? Because then you're still a victim of terrorism. Okay, cool. And then what if it's not shrapnel? Let's say it's an electromagnetic bomb, like an electromagnetic pulse. If it gave you a heart attack, and you were just lying flat afterwards and dead, like those over 300, what were they, reindeer in somewhere up north that suddenly were found to be all simultaneously struck by lightning, funnily enough, without even their fur being singed. Okay, but let's say if it's an electromagnetic bomb and you just get instant, heart attack, and you die, that's still terrorism, right? Okay, good. So we can slowly, work our way there. So then given that only having part of your organ damaged is already terrorism, and given that not just like Semtex, bombs damaging you, but also electromagnetic bombs damaging you is also terrorism, we can probably work out that you sitting in your home, right, like all the victims of the intelligence agencies do, and you then having your joints damaged with an electromagnetic weapon, like I had. They damaged my knee, and they also damaged my hip, and they also bruised me up, and they also made my eye go blurry. Then that's terrorism, right? Okay. And then being in a London hotel room and having electromagnetic pulses shot into your brain such that, it's punching through and causing pain in your hand and in your brain, so that you break down crying in front of your husband and scramble to call your best friend to look up the nearest hospital because your phone doesn't have internet. If that happens, is that terrorism? Because, with the exercise we just ran, that's what it looks like to me, like terrorism. And then when this happens after you've just come back from a high court case trying to get an injunction against British intelligence for terrorism, and then terrorism happens to you straight after in a London hotel room after you've been demonstratively stalked from the Royal Courts of Justice to the hotel, and then you experience terrorism, it's probably not Mossad, right? And it's probably not just pure chance that someone else who just independently bought an electromagnetic gun is just pointing it at just your hotel room and shoots at you full whack. Could happen, but it's really unlikely. What's really likely is that, the terrorism you try to get an injunction against has just happened to you again, even harder, in London, because MI5 actually produced terrorism. Is that newsworthy at all? Do you think there could be like this much space in Private Eye or The Guardian or the Daily Mail between those legs, legs and tits? Maybe just a bit about an actual scientist who went to Oxford, who was a fellow at Oxford, who's just going about her business, and ironically, who also worked to help people get back into work. That's what she was trying to do. Make systems more efficient, make currencies and institutions more stable, more resilient against financial, upheavals. That's what I was trying to do. And now she's working on, or they're trying to, make systems more humane, more sane, and make them more efficient. Now, that this person then even has to go to London to try to get what sounds like a bunch of terrorist thugs to stop what they're doing so that she can continue her work. Now that's newsworthy. But then that she goes to a hotel room and gets shot in the head by what must be the same people. By induction, that must also be newsworthy, right? Yeah? Newsworthy? I should probably look up what newsworthy means these days in the Oxford English Dictionary. But in the olden days, this is what it used to be, right? It's not like we have something called rule of law, like a rule of, hang on, I think I might have, where the hell is it? Sorry, I can also show you how I have to sit here to be able to work pain-free, right? I have to, and I will show you, I have to sit here with shielding. Sorry, that looks like it's toppled down, but as I'm sitting, my head is like this height. I'm still down, under the shielding level. And that's because my neighbors, one there who shoots me in the head on the left-hand side, one there who shoots me in the head on the right-hand side, and there must be a transmitter somewhere down south. Okay? Because I keep being microwaved on the back and the side of the right-hand side of my face. This is me measuring the high frequencies, and I can explain what this is. This is actually an antenna measuring the radiation here. And it's just so interesting, you know, because in March, Dr. Paul Baccio, who worked for DARPA, went public and he said anything, if you measure a certified measurement of frequencies between 400 megahertz and 700 megahertz at this band, you know, around this massive peak at 560 megahertz, the certified measurement of those RF frequencies is an act of terrorism, because these frequencies are considered to be brain interference frequencies. So to have, and by the way, this is the mobile phone signal here. So little white square, that's the mobile phone signal. So this bump is mobile phone signal. That massive bump with the huge spike, that is what Dr. Paul Baccio calls an act of terrorism, because these frequencies are known to be interfering with the brain. At least this is what that article said. The actual numbers could have been falsified by the journalists who are known to work for the intelligence agencies, but it is just so intriguing. And you know what? There's this hump. Before I went to the court case, there was just 560. There was just a peak and nothing around. And now there's this hump. It almost looks like my brain is being read out. Maybe for the Human Brain Project here. Maybe that's where all the money is. And then there's all this structure, you know. So what you can see here is 100 megahertz down there, all the way up to 4 gigahertz. And then you can see that there are bands with absolutely no emissions. So this is the high frequency measurement. This is what my home looks like. So the scale is, these lines are interspaced with a spacing of 200 megahertz. This is 400 megahertz, this line. And this hump between 400 and 800 megahertz, that is, so centered around 600 megahertz, that is apparently an act of terrorism. And I can explain this measuring device. This is an antenna, so you can see here, I mean, the measurement is the same, and you can see it's not touching anything here. It's just an antenna. It's connected to the measuring device here, right, which is a scientific measuring device called the Spectron HF 4040. And this is manufactured by a German company called Aronia. And the yellow sticker on the right-hand side, that's the calibration sticker. Because this is a scientific measuring device, it's, you know, it has to show when it was calibrated. And it was calibrated in May 2016. You probably can't see that, but, you know, I show you that's true. You know, these things are happening to real people. You can try to stamp, you know, to actually stamp me as mad. And you have. I mean, MI5 has made Greater Manchester Police put on this, you know, intimidation theatre. You can try, but I would encourage you not to, not for my sake, which I know you couldn't give a rat's tail about, but for your sake, my friends, because right now we do live in a networked society, and humans only figure out how networked we actually are and what you can do with this networking. And now we're actually bringing information to the fore at a very rapid rate, you know. And so this is not news, by the way. I mean, you know, even the heads and retired heads of intelligence are on public record saying that, yeah, things are changing so fast in the technical domain. And typically, I mean, there's an interview, I think it's online. If you go to YouTube and then you Google Sir John Scarlett, there will be an actual video interview where he is on public record saying, yeah, you know, I mean, everything is changing just so fast in the technical world. And this is what you hear all the time. And I think Sir Richard Dearlove is also on record saying that. You know, I think that was an Oxford or Cambridge speech. Yeah, so fast. But typically, right, I mean, you know, these heads of intelligence have got degrees in history and stuff like that. So their best quantitative assessment that they can give you is so fast. Well, there's a level above that you can say, and for that maybe you have to have a degree in maths or physics. What I can tell you is that it's not just so fast, it is getting faster, right? Every day. It is getting faster. So what the speed with which things are changing today is much slower than the speed with which things are changing in 6 months' time. And with change, I mean new technologies being assembled. And in terms of information flow, oh goody, there things will be coming to the fore much faster than today. And the reason for that is that people are still coming online. People are still opening Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts. You know, there's some people still, I mean, imagine, they're coming, you know, joining the internet for the first time. They're trying email for the first time. It's getting fewer and fewer, so most of us have email. But there's still people like that. Still people who discover that they can put video messages on YouTube. I mean, you know, look at me, right? I mean, this wasn't my first choice putting, but I'm going to put it out. And then other people watch it, exchange the information, and information is like a ratchet. So once you have knowledge or information, you can't really go back. You can't forget details of the information, but overall, there's only a forward pressure in this sort of system. And because of the interconnectedness, the speed with that is happening goes with the speed of the flow through networks. And networks are nonlinear systems. Nonlinear. This means they are highly nonlinear, in fact. And highly nonlinear systems with the pressure towards increased information means that the speed with which information will be, accumulated and pictures will be emerging is much quicker in 6 months' time than now. And because I kind of try to estimate the mathematics of just how much faster it will be, do you see the difference? If you listen to, Sir John Scarlett, he says it's just so fast. Yeah, that's like stating the freaking obvious. What I tell you is that it's a mathematical certainty that it will be ever faster. And in fact, the rate of increase in speed will also increase. So it will not just get faster, it will get faster, if you know what I mean. Okay, I mean, it's easier to express this in mathematics, but that's what I predict, because that's what the mathematics shows. And, you can kind of imagine that, but to actually do it quantitatively, there are very few people who are working on networks and the mathematics of networks these days. So the mathematical certainty that this is the case, you can estimate, but it still should be maybe news to you. So it is understandable that Greater Manchester Police and MI5, I don't know what degree Andrew Parker, had, maybe PP or, whatever, that he can't quite get his head around that. But at the end of October 2016, having Greater Manchester Police stage intimidation theatre against Dr. Katherine Horton on the mental health theme just because she reported having been brutally microwaved in her hotel room, right, might seem like a good idea if you don't know mathematics. But it's a really shit idea if you do. It's like so freaking obvious that it's shit. It's laughable. So if you actually applied to Oxford or Cambridge for mathematics or even physics with this level of understanding or gut feeling for mathematical processes, you wouldn't get in. That's what I'm saying. Okay? So, and the reason why, it's because, you can just say, oh yeah, but Dr. Katherine Horton is mad. Even though she did manage to somehow represent herself in court, and, she has the judgment saying that, she did come across pretty clear in the head. Back then the judge was saying, yeah, but I can't see any effect of electromagnetic weapons on her because she comes across so clear. She was trying to dispel the fact that I said I have been attacked with microwave weapons, and it affects your brain when you're collecting evidence. So the judge said, oh, I can't see evidence for that. You seem fine. Oh, yes? Well, I've got a high court judge saying I'm pretty clear in the head. Funny how they always try to say the other thing, depending on what suits them. But when you've got it on writing, you've got a judgment saying you're really clear in the head. There's no indication of anything being wrong with you. And then MI5, who must have read the judgment because it was a case against them, try to then, a couple of months later, on the same topic, have, send an ambulance because of my mental health concerns. This is just funny. And you can pull it off in October 2016, but probably in 6 months' time, you should be shitting yourself about what you did. Not because of what I'm gonna do, but because of what the networked information flow will bring at your door. Do you understand? Because you have not just assaulted me, you've assaulted thousands of people with electromagnetic weapons. All of them are now networking. They're pinging the network individually, right? I can maybe draw you a diagram what that looks like, but they are randomly pinging people and telling people about this. And other people say, oh, hang on, now that you mention it, I do have this other piece of information. They start Googling, and what you basically have, the effect is pretty much akin to the crawler bots that Google sends out over the web to assemble information, to have your, assemble these crawlers so that you can index your websites and so on. Maybe you heard about that. But the funny thing is humans are doing the same thing. I mean, a bit more slowly than the crawler bots, but therefore much more brainy. Okay? So they actually go about targeted information, and they, being humans, also understand other humans. So they know what information to look for. And when something smells like corruption, unlike the crawler bots, they will not go about it neutrally. They will know where to dig. And they will go, hang on, I do remember this guy dying under strange circumstances. And if you say heart attacks could be induced, could this guy have been murdered by MI5? And before you know it, you yourself have seeded an army against you, you morons. In a networked society, you pulling off shit like that after it's public knowledge that microwave weapons exist, and even idiots can work out the mathematics that therefore you do expect victims. So when a victim goes to the police and the police hasn't taken any evidence from her, sent her straight back, and immediately comes to the conclusion that she must be mad, and then wastes 4 man-hours on intimidation theatre before having even received any evidence, because I was never actually allowed to talk to a police officer. I was sent back home by the receptionist. Then it doesn't really look good. In fact, it's like really shit, and it's gonna stick forever now. And what you did kind of is now being pinged, not even by me, but by, for example, then and there I did talk to the police officers, and maybe all 4 people who turned up were all MI5, and the 2 police officers were actually actors, and the 2 ambulance staff were actors, and could be because the age structure was 3 young people and an older guy. I mean, the classic MI5 senior handler supervising 3 gang stalkers, actors sort of thing. Could be. But even so, I had a hard chat to these people about microwave weapons, and when I said, have you guys heard about microwave weapons, certainly the lady who was there said no. And I mean, unless she's really the best actor on your payroll, MI5, then I am really impressed about her, because she came across as like 100% genuine. And then I did talk to them about microwave weapons, and I explained why it's really important that people know about it. And if they're really genuine ambulance staff and police officers, they especially have to know about microwave weapons and civilians being attacked by them. If they're really true police officers in the spirit of what the police stands for and what ambulance staff stand for. And even if they were your 4 agents, MI5, having a human interaction like that puts information into their brain, and they suddenly think, hang on, even if they're MI5 operatives, they think, hang on, guys, what are we doing? Staging this bullcrap for a lady who clearly seems to be trying really hard to save other people's lives. I mean, we're also told we should be fighting terrorism, so, it kind of creates like internal discord, So by staging that, what you actually did, you tried to stage something against me, and you created 5 crawler bots. 5 information crawler bots, potentially. 5. So your amplification factor just there was 5. To potentially turn against you. Not just now or this week or next week, at any time later. So when you want to understand in what deep shit you are, you actually have to take the integral. You know, to find out in what deep shit you are in 6 months' time, you have to take the integral between delta T0 when you start counting and then, you know? Do you understand mathematically what an integral is? It's like adding up all the different time intervals, right? So, and I can tell you mathematically that that's a very large number. In a networked society, to calculate how many crawler bots your crawler bots have spawned, it will be a very large number within 6 months. And you don't just stage bullshit against me, you stage bullshit against all victims. So I mean, your shoot in the ass factor is bigger than 5. It's like insanely high. Do you understand? I'm trying to explain to you the mathematics of how you shoot yourself in the ass. I mean, I'm not doing it. You can attack me for saying it, but it doesn't change the mathematics. Do you understand? I mean, there were some spectacular cases where math prodigies died, like Gareth Williams. But others like John Nash died and Aaron Swartz died, right? I mean, so curious that they all keep dying. But what I have to say to everybody is, even if you kill the mathematician, the maths still works the same way. Do you understand? So, doing that is like the dumbest thing. So what you actually showed is that at MI5, people don't have degrees in mathematics and physics. The leadership does not have degrees in mathematics and physics. And then you will end up, the best thing you can do is say what Sir John Scarlett said, which is it's changing so fast. Yeah, but that doesn't do it justice. Really, I mean, it's kind of in the right direction, but blow me, it's like even fast is not the same as it's changing faster every day with an increase in how fast it changes every day. It's like the same amplification effect akin to interest on interest. Eventually it just goes woof, and that's when it gets you. Do you see? So I would guess, just from that little spectacle, that you don't really understand maths or physics, and that is bad. In a networked society, actually Gareth Williams, who could have figured it out, was the most valuable asset you had. And John Nash was also the most valuable asset the Americans had, and Aaron Swartz. Because if they heard me speak, they would know what the hell I'm on about. You clearly don't. Do you understand? So by now you have tortured me now for 10 months. I've survived an assassination attempt. I got death threats. By now I'm pretty comfortable with the thought of me dying. And you have, by the way, shot at me painfully with cancer weapons for 10 months. So the fact that I'm gonna die fairly soon by now is like a given. Okay, so at that point, one becomes very chillaxed because, what you gonna do? Kill me? You are killing me. So what you gonna do? Like, kill me even faster? Yeah, well, that sometimes I almost feel that would be nice. But, do you understand? So you really at MI5 and also at the BND and all these other places, because the same applies to them. I'm sorry, I'm not having just to go specifically at the British. That would be just very unkind. I actually do love the British. I also did enjoy reading the British papers. I just wish there would be more in it, especially the really important stuff, right? It just so happens that I first started being attacked and harassed by Brits in Britain, which is why my problem, at first is with MI5. But I also have got my issues with the BND and the Swiss, and also the Italians, because I was also attacked in Italy and in the Netherlands and in Spain. But because all of this started with MI5, I will just talk to them first. So you guys don't really understand maths, and that's a problem. So maybe quickly find someone like Gareth Williams who can explain it to you in the simplest terms possible. And then number 2, stop staging the bullshit mental health card, theater on that stupid stuff. It doesn't work anymore. Look, it's so funny. You have already, not you, I mean with you I mean the intelligence community, you guys have already publicly executed people with electromagnetic weapons. And some of them lived long enough to say, I was attacked with electromagnetic weapons. It doesn't fly anymore. Do you understand? It's now freaking public. It's up on YouTube. Maybe you spend too much time reading Private Eye and The Guardian, and then you don't know about these things. But you know what? My generation doesn't. We don't really read The Guardian anymore, and we don't read Private Eye. And after what I've just, seen about you guys, I think that's also a good thing. But a lot of people are watching YouTube, and, if they haven't heard about microwave weapons, as long as they can move their fingers to Google, or maybe, use voice commands, if they don't have hands, to actually return a search, funnily enough, they will have within seconds more of a clue than you. And then we'll end up in a situation where literally someone who is, disabled and is in a care home, say, or with a carer, by just using Google and having a brain, right, which is the most powerful thing, can know more about our national security situation than the head of MI5 and 6. And this is a good thing, but given that you're paid to be on top of this, it doesn't look good. It really doesn't look good. In modern society, you would be much better off having degrees in maths and physics being the head of these places than degrees of history in history. And that's because what is happening now has never, ever been seen in history ever before. And I don't just say it in a wishy-washy way. What I mean precisely is actually something mathematical. We are now in a fundamentally new era because of the number of people we have and because of the technology we have. And what you have is, sorry to go on about this, I did study, complex systems and so on. And one of the things you have in complex systems is something called emergence. You have certain phenomena that only exist at certain scales, but not below. Okay? And you have these emergent effects. Now, because of these emergent effects, what history teaches us cannot inform us what's going to happen. It can give some indications, and history is a really valuable input, but studying history will not be as useful as studying mathematics and physics because of emergence. Do you understand? This is a mathematical, non-trivial piece of information I give you. We live in a world with complex systems, and they are so big now, we've got macroscopically significant emergent effects, emergent phenomena. Do you understand? Probably not, but you can probably roughly have a gut feeling for where I'm going with this. So, honestly, you would be better off cutting the crap at MI5. Stop staging the intimidation theater. I mean, the cleverest thing you could have done, the absolute freaking cleverest thing, even before I go to the High Court to actually embarrass you and make it public what you're doing, to your own scientists, you idiots, and your own citizens, because you are also radiating my husband, before publicly humiliating you idiots, you could have just stopped this at any point and it's gone come to my door, because with Philip Kerr, you actually did go and speak to him repeatedly. You could have come to me and said, okay, sorry, you know what, it's true. It's true what you're sending in emails and talking to your parents about. We have been surveying you for the last 5 years, and we have been harassing you. And sorry, you know what? I mean, these are still our old processes because it's an old organization and some of our processes are shit. I mean, you probably know what it's like having studied complex systems and complex organizations, that you have this dead wood, you know, everywhere, and idiots everywhere and psychopaths everywhere. And we're trying to get that under control, but we're in this transit period. So sorry about all the shit we put you through. But because we read all your emails and we know what you're working on, we kind of figured out that you kind of know more about maths and physics than we do. I mean, we do have access to like Nobel Prize winners and all of that stuff, but they're kind of like busy with promoting themselves and teaching and being just Nobel Prize winners. And, you know, sometimes even like the next generation, like the young people, say stuff that's really important and that the old generation doesn't really see. For example, like, you know, that's what happened with, what's his name? Was it Charles Darwin? Well, I think all of the scientists started off like that. So, you know, even you can say sometimes useful stuff, and maybe you can help us unwind this shit, because we found out that really we don't really know how everything's working now. And we're, you know, I mean, all our bosses seem to be spending like oodles of money at GCHQ, like monitoring Twitter and censoring Twitter and shit like that, even though mathematically, as we found out listening to you, that's not really a winning strategy. So we seem to be just wasting all this money, and we seem to have our head up our arse. So do you have any ideas how we could do it better? I mean, boy, yeah. You could have like not microwaved my head, not try to like run the fucking human brain project on me, read out my brain to then try to be more clever than I could be by just fucking telling to your face. You know, because, I mean, if you don't know mathematics and physics, then you also don't know quantum mechanics, but by just irradiating it with this, you know, the frickin' frequencies, you're disturbing the network that's finely tuned for optimum processing power. So whatever you do, you can't make it better. You can make it worse. Do you understand? Because the system has evolved this way, because this is how it works. So if you introduce a disturbance, no matter how fine this disturbance is, you still just cock things up. And again, you have to know physics and mathematics to understand why, you know, running remote EEGs on people just fucks their brain. It really does. And sorry, all the people who don't know about this technology and haven't read any witness statements or victim statements, you know, they probably think, what is she on about? And sorry, I just have to tell you that there's lots of technology that MI5 know about. And I found out about it because they, you know, tried it on me, and they are trying it on me, as I'm trying to show you with this frequency graph, you know, like brain interference frequencies. But these kids, because they think, oh, they've got these scientists who actually also, those scientists also just want to sell them crap, right? Because that's how it works. It's not necessarily the best technology that's being sold to you, MI5. It's probably just the most expensive technology, because then you pay a lot, you know? But if you just know a bit about mathematics and quantum mechanics, you know, and physics, you can figure out that whatever it is that they're doing, they're actually just cocking things up. And that's a mathematical, quantum mechanical certainty. And frankly, everything we've seen about the world confirms that what these people have been doing is just cock things up, you know. So you can cross-check yourself. But, you know, it doesn't, what you're doing is bullshit. You're so freaking stupid that you have been sold some expensive crap. You think that's the most important thing that you should be doing, but actually it is just expensive crap. And there's something that's for free and it's much better, but you just don't value it because it's for free. I could have told you everything you need to know, how not to be really shit and embarrassing in the eyes of the Russians and the Chinese, and you could have just gotten it for free, right? Just then and there. But instead, no, you have to buy the expensive shit and then fuck up the stuff that you get for free or could have gotten for free. And then you have screwed yourself again. Sorry, I mean, this is now, almost like a private conversation between MI5 or, public conversation and me. But from what I have seen, because you put it into the expressive form of dance, what you're doing is bullshit. It's weaponized bullshit, I have to say. It's like, terrorism by bullshit. That's what it is. And the best thing is, you're not screwing the Chinese or the Russians, who frankly must be wetting themselves laughing, seeing that you idiots are microwaving your own scientists who studied complex systems. I mean, if there's anything in the, anything that we need in the world now going forward, is people who understand complex systems. Really, that is, I tell you, whatever you will be in, healthcare, engineering, computer programming, internet architecture, complex systems will be the biggest topic. It will concern us all because we're still figuring out what these emergence effects are, which we've never seen before, how they work, how we should operate not to screw things up. And it will be really important because whatever we do, it will be non-linear systems. So the smallest thing that we do wrong can blow up in our face. Okay, so, I mean, the KGB must be wetting themselves, laughing. Because by now, the KGB must also know about me, right? I mean, it probably doesn't escape the attention of other intelligence agencies when people start court cases against, what you're doing. Because people want to listen in and say, hey, hang on, so what have they done to this person? Because it's being broadcast publicly. It's like the cheapest intelligence that you can gather. It's what's being broadcast publicly, And so surely by now, they must also keep a tab, and they must be just pissing themselves. Really. I mean, they are also not short of idiots at the KGB, right? But the Russians also, typically from what I've seen in physics, have some brilliant people and amazing mathematicians. And from what Russia seems to have done in the last couple of years, something tells me in the way they are running their complex systems that they are better informed about what they should do than we in the West. So they must have figured stuff out that we're still here, having our head in knots about. But I really tell you, MI5, and BND and NDB, I honestly, I mean, this is not just me. I'm not anti-Swiss or anti-German or anti-British. I mean, heck no, I am on your side. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm telling you, right? I'm not secretly saying this to the KGB. Hey, look, do you know how stupid they are? If you really want to fuck them, do this. No, I'm telling to your face. And by the way, I try to tell you in every phone conversation I had, in every email I'm sending, I'm trying to point you towards where you should be going. If you're not completely thick in the head, you should have figured it out by now. Otherwise, ask GCHQ, go back through my emails and try to work it out. Okay? But really, try to just fuck the brain of your few young scientists who are working to understand complex systems, especially complex human systems. It's like, I mean, it's the dumbest thing you can do. It's like, literally, it's like, a medieval English army, where the longbows were really valuable, the archers, right? Okay. And you've got your top archers, the ones who just figured out the new technology of how to aim at the target much better. And instead of just putting them, helping them and making sure that they can do what they are best at, you actually shoot them in the head. You take like the thickest kid that just learned how to use a longbow, is just about strong enough to pull it, and then you take your archers with a new technology who understand what needs to be done, and you shoot them in the head. Right, just like that. I mean, even medieval generals figured out that shooting your archers in the head yourself in a situation of war is a stupid thing to do. It's so freaking stupid. Like, even uneducated people in the medieval ages could figure it out. So what exactly is this that you're pulling off? Because it looks like you're so out of control and so stupid, and your leadership is so utterly uninformed that you're just all over the shop. And you're all over the shop publicly. Do you know? I mean, I don't know how else to put it in like simplest terms, you know, but what you're doing is like freaking stupid. And I understand. I mean, I looked at MK Ultra and COINTELPRO, and I found out that all of those attacked people of all social classes. And I understand that for, you know, your leadership wants to have the privilege to just pick people at random, you know, maybe if they're buddies or they themselves really want to have someone just disintegrated and just get off on that. You know, especially if it's a woman, see her like being mutilated. That really arouses people, you know, on the sadistic end of the spectrum, which is actually quite large. So I can see that for the wank factor, you know, your leadership and their buddies from uni want to have the privilege to just pick whichever women they want to have tortured to death. I totally see that, you know. But even then, for the sake of a wank, there must be some sort of like sane considerations. You know, when the hormones have died down and you got it out of your system and your head clears again, do you maybe think, hang on, I mean, are we not shooting ourselves in the foot doing that to her? Really? I mean, I know that national security, you're so past, you know, big picture of national security considerations. You know, this sounds like totally out there that I suggest this to you, you know, that maybe national security might be more important than just a temporary wank. I totally understand it, but just bear with me. See where I'm trying to take this, you know. If you maim and mutilate scientists, you know, scientists, they are kind of rare in your population. And then scientists who really worked hard as young people to get a first and then a PhD from Oxford, and then worked really hard as, you know, academics after that, as fellows, as research fellows, to actually come up with new fields of scientific inquiry. They are really rare. It's like, you know, if you know ecosystems, it's like a rare breed, you know. But, you know, they're like, when they're rare, and when the field that they are working on or working towards, they might not be the best ones. They might not be like the next Nobel Prize winners. But even so, it turns out, so past experience shows that letting them do that, what they're really good at, if it's a new field and that they're very rare and that field is kind of like needed in future, is better than torturing them to death. You know, I know it's like a really surprising result, and I have to say it surprised me the first time I read it. I was like, oh wow, you know, but it just so turns out, I mean, you can go around, you being MI5, you must have connections to a lot of the universities and the professors there, and you can, you know, you can kind of explain to them what I've just explained, or show them this video and then see if on a blackboard they can work it out for you. But, you know, this is what I found, and this is what I've kind of like heard and come across from other sources, that this seems to be the case. So, you know, the best thing would be, and the same applies to the Swiss, by the way. I mean, you can continue doing the human brain project, or what should rather be the human brain fuck project, and, you know, do it on me and my family, and then, you know, inject nanoparticles into me against my will and this sort of stuff, and change my medication to even more nanoparticles and control me even more. But the thing is, if you control me or my brain, the thing is, you are not a rare breed. You're not a rare scientist, and you don't really know what to do to come up with a new area of scientific inquiry, because you haven't, right? If you could, you would have, but you haven't. So if you control my brain, you clearly cannot do what I'm doing naturally. Do you understand? And you can have all these, like, you know, people at your universities who think that they're really important and go on about, oh yeah, mind control and brain reading, and oh yeah, you know what, we can have images broadcast into our brain. Yeah, we could just also just open our eyes and actually freaking look at the display, right? But yeah, we can broadcast into our brain. It sounds really cool, but when you know about physics, the effect of these waves into your brain, and about the way the human brain has actually evolved to process, you can figure out after time mathematically that that's bullshit. So to talk to these guys and, you know, let them run their experiments on me, the human brain project things, and, you know, testing microwave weapons and pharma, you know, things, and nanotech and smart dust and, you know, whatever, smart pills and all this shit. Yeah, you can test that on me and my family. But it turns out, for the reasons I've just tried to explain to you slowly, that it's a really inefficient, kind of like stupid thing to do. You know, and then you can also say, okay, but she's the one who's working on new scientific fields, and then we try it on her family. But then, as it turns out, genetically, my siblings are very close to me. So if I do something, then maybe they should be allowed to freely develop, because they will also do something with a very high chance. And the same for my parents, because that's where the genes are coming from. So they are doing something very important, which is why we're this way. And my husband also has a first from Oxford, also has a PhD, you know, in physics. And he's also really brainy in his own right. And the same applies to him, because he also, when he's got the time, he's thinking about new things to develop. So if you control his brain or my family's brain, what you're going to do is degrade your future rate of return, you muppets. For the Human Brain Project, which anybody who knows maths can work out, or physics or quantum mechanics or any field of, you know, scientific inquiry, can work out, is like the biggest pile of bullshit, this weaponized bullshit that you guys have produced. I mean, do you understand? I know this is a really long lecture, and by now, I mean, I've spoken to an hour and 40 minutes, and I know from experience teaching students that, you know, I mean, after a while, it's very hard for people to just keep following, you know, especially when it's such complex stuff. But, you know, I just wanted to say that, you know, whilst I'm talking, I'm also being shot in the head, you know, regularly with pulses that feel very, very, very unpleasant. I mean, you can see this sometimes jump up. If I wait for long enough, there will be a pulse to my head, you know, because I just felt one, you know. And you can have my neighbors here in Switzerland paste on laser beams that are aimed at my head, and then you can work, you know, read out my brain electric fields and my brain processes, and drill a pencil beam into my brain and then see how it changes. And then you can have like my head irradiated between 400 and 700 megahertz, if that's indeed the frequency. But it's very strange that, you know, I mean, I show you again, it's still the case here, and you can see the measurement running as we speak. So this is, I mean, to show you, this is the this is the data input cable. It's connected here to this measuring device. Can you see there? This is just the power cable, and this in turn is connected to the antenna. So this antenna is being read out there, and you can check the Aronia software, and it goes from 100 megahertz to 4 gigahertz, and at 560 megahertz there's this peak here. So I'm not sure if you can read the numbers, but it's like that peak. This is the mobile phone signal, and there's this big thing that's much bigger than the mobile phone signal in this room. So something seems to be happening that just dwarfs the mobile phone signal. Right? I mean, interesting, isn't it? So, and it just so happens that a guy, you know, who's said to have worked at DARPA has gone public in spring this year, saying that those frequencies are an act of terrorism. So one would have to track down the guy and check if this is really the frequency band that he meant, you know. Has it been falsified by a journalist? Am I being misled? But I can tell you from experience that the 560, frequency has been pumped into my house at extremely high intensity, much higher than the mobile phone signal, for ever since I bought this measuring device in May. And then I had my court appearances in late May, June and July. And then, I think it was after the third one, or somewhere thereabouts, I think it was after the third one, suddenly it wasn't just the 560, it was also all the other frequencies that are identified as brain interference frequencies. And as Dr. Paul Baccio is said to have stated, ham radio operators are not allowed to broadcast in the range 400 to 700 megahertz because it is known to interfere with the human brain. And therefore, hang on, I think I might have it. So for the record, let me just get out the quote bundle of bits thereof, and let me show you and give you the exact reference. So what I'm referring to is an article that was published, and I really hope it's genuine and not put out by the intelligence agencies to mislead. It looks like this. This is a picture of Dr. Paul Baccio, and the title that you can Google, or should Google, is called Senior DARPA Scientist. DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, catchy, in the US. So Senior DARPA Scientist warns of widespread lethal attacks upon the public coming from microwave towers. And it was published on the 9th of April 2016 by Dave Hodges. Okay? And so Dr. Paul Baccio, educational background, Princeton University, PhD in computational and applied mathematics, staff member at Los Alamos National Lab, computational physics, research associate, Howard Hughes Medical Institute, and then also DARPA. Right? It is said. So DARPA senior scientist working at Los Alamos. So he was a staff member from October 2001 to August 2004. And then he says, this is what he's quoted. Oh, here. I'm a former scientist from Los Alamos National Lab, where I held a Q clearance for the DOE, so top secret DOD, for several years. I've also worked on DARPA research projects. I have a PhD from Princeton and now live in St. Petersburg and work. Information deleted. St. Petersburg. Okay. So this is St. Petersburg, I think, Florida. FL 33701. So, but you listened up, right? Anyway, so he says, cellular transmissions broadcast at 853 megahertz. So that's what agrees with what I've just showed you. Human brain resonance is centered around 450 megahertz. And ham radio operators are not allowed to broadcast at the 400 megahertz to 700 megahertz band. I would suggest a filtering at the 400 megahertz to 700 megahertz band on all microwave and cellular transmissions. Digital filters should suffice in the near term. Civilians are being harmed by the deliberate transmissions of an established technology. The verified measurement and existence of these RF band transmissions constitutes a terrorist act. And he also refers to patents, that the active technology has been used. So illegal transmissions of signals from cellular and microwave transmission towers. The active technology has been in use for approximately 3.5 years, roughly corresponding to the expiry of the 92 and 94 patents funded by DARPA. And he refers to US patent 5123844 on the 23rd of June 1992 and US patent 5289438 February 22nd 1994, I think. There's unlawful use of the various lethal aspects of the technology. The technology is active and civilians are being targeted with harmful health effects. and he says the band from 437 megahertz to 478 megahertz with peaks around roughly 6 megahertz intervals appears to have sizable spectral energy components. That's what he picked up on. This is in the US, and now I've just shown you the measurements here in Switzerland. And by the way, I can zoom in on what he says. Shall I do that? I'll demonstrate. So 437, 478. I'll show you my measurements, live measurements in my office about this, which apparently is a terrorist act. So the only thing I have to figure out is how to place the webcam such that you can see. Okay, hang on. Okay, all right. So I'm going to change now the frequency band here to 400, I'm not sure, you probably can't see, 430 megahertz. Okay, it's going to be a bit jittery, don't get seasick. 460 megahertz, that will be the lowest band. And then here I'm going to put, first of all, megahertz, and then 480, okay? And now let's measure what this looks like. Here. Okay, so I do get the signal. And the signal seems to be between minus 70 and minus 65 dBm. Okay, so here, today, I can't see significant spectral components, but if I change the upper limit to 800, let's say 700 megahertz, because he said anything that you measure in the band of 400 to 700 megahertz, you know, constitutes a terrorist act. And here you already see this bump here. And this is what it looks like when there are no transmissions, so it drops down to minus 100, so essentially 0. So here you can see these spectral components, right? And you can see that everything between 430, you know, this is the area he was talking about, but I've got spectral components at 560. And you can see this thing being switched on and off as it scans. So these frequencies are being switched on and off, and here it seems to be just continually on. You know, continual irradiation. So this is what this looks like. So this peak, when it touches that line, is at minus 45 dB. The baseline, so this thing, like this line here, if I look at this pedestal, that line is at minus 60 dB. Can you see? It's difficult because this camera can't figure it in. So, and to compare, let me put it up to where the mobile phone signal is. So let me go up to 900 megahertz, the upper boundary. Sorry, that's 900 megahertz. And now you can see what this looks like. So the GSM, the mobile phone signal, is marked here. That's the mobile phone signal here, this tiny little thing. And then you can see it kind of drops down, but there's some frequencies here. Then there's nothing, and then something starts up here at 750, or just above 760. This thing starts up, this hump. Can you see? And then you've got this big hump with different spectral components between 750 and going down to even below 430. So let's go down to, I mean, he said 400 megahertz is the lower bound. Let's make this 350 megahertz so that we can see the entire spectrum. So I'm now plotting 350 megahertz to 900 megahertz. And this switching on and off, that's why it sometimes drops down and you see this jaggedy structure. That is basically what he calls spectral components. So let me put it down so you can just look at it in peace and quiet. Like this, okay? So I've got this big thing here, which is always there, and it's at 560. And I measured this standalone peak when I bought